I'm convinced, after 30 plus years now of marriage and family counseling, that there's fundamentally 5 ways to express love emotionally. I call them the 5 love languages. Love is something you do for somebody else, not something you do for yourself. Any relationship can be enhanced if we learn people's love language and we choose to speak it. Thank you. Thank you. I'm Dr. Gary Chapman, author of The 5 Love Languages and numerous other books on marriage. I've been involved in marriage and family counseling now for over 35 years. I'm going to tell you up front what I hope is going to happen in the brief time that we spend together. My first desire is that your relationships will get better. Relationships either get better or they get worse. They never stand still. And I certainly hope that your relationships will not get worse. I hope they're going to get better. The second objective I have is that you will learn some things that you will find so helpful that you will want to share them with your friends and help them have better relationships. So our topic is the most important word in the English language and the most confusing word in the English language. I say that love is the most important word because if you look at our music, if you look at our literature, if you look at our movies, if you look at our religions, you will find that love is a central theme in all of them. But it's a confusing word because we use the word love in 1,000 ways. We say, for example, I love hot dogs. And then we say, I love my mother. I think there's a difference, hot dogs and mothers, but we use the same word to talk about 1,000 things. Now, I'm not going to discuss 1,000 ways in which we use the word love. I'm going to discuss only one way in which we use the word love, and that is love as an emotional need. I agree with Dr. Ross Campbell, psychiatrist, who said, inside every child there's an emotional love tank. And when the love tank is full, that is, the child genuinely feels loved by the parents, the child grows up normally. But when the love tank is empty, the child grows up with many internal struggles. And in the teenage years, the child will go looking for love, typically in all the wrong places. But I believe that adults also have a love tank. And if you're married, the person you would most like to love you is your spouse. In fact, if you feel loved by your spouse, the whole world looks bright. But if the love tank is empty and you feel like they don't love me, they wish they weren't married to me, the whole world can begin to look dark. So what we're going to talk about is how to keep the love tank full in a marriage, with children, and in all of our relationships. The question is, how do you communicate love so the other person will feel loved? I'm convinced, after 30 plus years now of marriage and family counseling, that there's fundamentally 5 ways to express love emotionally. I call them the 5 love languages. I want to share them with you and show you how they work in a marriage, and you will readily see how they work in other relationships. Love language number 1, words of affirmation. Using words to affirm the other person. Ladies, has your husband said anything similar to this in the last week? You look nice in that outfit. Husbands, has your wife said anything similar to this in the last week? Ooh, do you ever look tough tonight? Try that one on. Words that affirm the other person. The power of the tongue. You know, there's an ancient proverb that says life and death are in the power of the tongue. You can kill your spouse or give them life by the way you talk to them. Words of affirmation. A second language is gifts. My academic background is anthropology, the study of cultures. We have never discovered a culture in which gift giving is not an expression of love. It's universal to give gifts as an expression of love. Now, the gifts need not be expensive. Haven't we always said it's the thought that counts? But I remind you, it's not the thought left in your head that counts. It's the gift that came out of the thought in your head. You know, guys, you can get a nice card for $5. Can't afford the card? Do you remember how you fold the paper, take the scissors, open up the heart and write, I love you? Or you can get flowers free. Just go out in your backyard and pick one. You don't have any flowers in your backyard? Your neighbor's yard. Ask them. They'll give you a flower. That's what your children do. How many mothers have ever received a dandelion from your kids? Yes. Now, guys, I'm not suggesting dandelions, okay? A third love language is acts of service. Doing something for the other person that you know they would like for you to do. Cooking a meal is an act of service. Big act of service. Incidentally, anybody still cook? A few of you, yeah, a few of you cook. Cooking a meal is an act of service. Washing dishes is an act of service. Who does that at your place? Yeah, getting white spots off the mirror, vacuuming the floor, washing the car, mowing the lawn. Anything that you know the other person would like for you to do. Acts of service, a powerful communicator of love. Number 4 is quality time, by which I mean you give the other person your undivided attention. I don't mean sitting on the couch watching television. Someone else has your attention. I'm talking about sitting on the couch with the TV off, looking at each other and talking. Do you all have couches? What do you do with those things? Have you ever tried this? Sitting on the couch with the TV off, looking at each other. It can be scary at first. And talking to each other. Are the two of you taking a walk down the road, just talking with each other? Or going out to eat, assuming you talk with each other? Incidentally, have you noticed in a restaurant, you can almost always tell the difference between dating couples and married couples. Dating couples will look at each other and talk. Married couples sit there and you'd think they went there to eat. If I sit on the couch with my wife and give her 20 minutes looking, listening, interacting, I have given her 20 minutes of my life, and she has done the same for me. It's a powerful communicator when you give someone your undivided attention. Love language number 5 is physical touch. We've long known the emotional power of physical touch. That's why we pick up babies and hold them and kiss them and cuddle them. And long before the baby understands the meaning of the word love, the baby feels love by physical touch. Now, in marriage, I'm talking about holding hands. I'm talking about kissing. I'm talking about embracing. I'm talking about the whole sexual part of the marriage. I'm talking about arm around their shoulder. Or driving down the road, you just put your hand on their leg. Or you're sitting around the house and they walk by and you just trip them. I'm kidding, I'm kidding. Physical touch is a powerful communicator. Now, listen to me very carefully. Out of the 5 love languages, each of us has a primary love language. We can receive love in all 5 languages, but one of them speaks more deeply to us than the other 4. If you had to give up one, you'd give up this one, or this one, but not this one. That's the one that really makes you feel love. That is your primary love language. It's very similar to spoken language. Every one of us grows up speaking a language with a dialect, okay? I grew up speaking English, Southern style, but everyone grows up speaking a language with a dialect, and that's the one you understand best. The same is true with love. Now, once in a while, someone says to me, I don't know, Gary, I think 2 of those are just about equal for me. And my response? Fine, we'll give you 2 love languages. We'll call you bilingual. But most of us have a primary love language, a secondary love language, and then the other 3 fall in line under that. In marriage, almost never does a husband and wife have the same love language. It happens, but not very often. And by nature, we speak our own language. We do what would make us feel loved. For example, here's a young gal who grew up in a home where she didn't feel much love from her father. But every morning her father would say, I love you, honey, have a good day. Words of affirmation. But if she didn't feel love, then words of affirmation was not her love language. So she's married now, but she doesn't feel loved by her husband. But if she says to him, I just feel like you don't love me, he will likely say to her, don't love you? What are you talking about? That's the first thing I say every morning. And every afternoon when I come home, that's what I tell you, I love you. What do you mean I don't love you? But you see, her love language may be acts of service. If so, what she's feeling is, You know, I'm tired of I love you, I love you. If you love me, why don't you do something to help me around here? Look at you watching television while I work. What's this all about? You see, she doesn't feel loved even though he is sincere. I believe there are literally thousands of couples who are as sincere as they can be. They are loving each other, but they're not speaking the right love language. And consequently, the love tank is empty. Now, what if the love language of your spouse is something that doesn't come natural for you? And my answer is, so you learn to speak it. My wife's love language is acts of service. One of the things I do for her is vacuum the floors. Now, you don't know me well, but I want to ask you, do you think that vacuuming floors comes natural for me? My mother made me vacuum all through junior high and high school. I couldn't go play ball on Saturday until I vacuumed the house. In those days, I said to myself, if I ever get out of here, one thing I'm not going to do, I am not going to vacuum floors. You could not pay me enough to vacuum floors. There's only one reason I vacuum floors. L-O-V-E. You see, when it doesn't come natural, it's a greater expression of love. My wife knows every time I vacuum the floor, it's nothing but 100% pure, unadulterated love, and I get credit for the whole thing. You see, I don't vacuum floors for me. Fuzzy balls don't bother me. I can walk all over. Once a year is all I would ever need to vacuum for me. I vacuum every week for her. Love is something you do for somebody else, not something you do for yourself. So how do you discover your spouse's primary language? Well, in the book we have a profile that will help you, but let me give you some ideas. You ask this question: how do they most often express love to others? Observe their behavior. If they're hugging everybody they see, physical touch is probably their language. Second question, what do they complain about most often? Their complaint reveals the heart. If they say to you, we don't ever spend any time together, they're telling you that quality time is their language. And then number three, what do they request most often of you? If you're going on a business trip and they say to you, be sure and bring me a surprise, they're telling you that gifts is their language. Now, how does all of this work with children? Well, the first 3 years of the child's life, you pour on all five. You give them all five. But about 3 or 4 years of age, you can discover a child's love language by simply observing how they relate to you. If when you walk in the door, they grab you by the leg, physical touch is probably their language. Or you walk in the door and they invite you to their room, I want to show you my artwork, then quality time is probably their language. What do they request most often of you? If they say, Daddy, would you come in the backyard and play ball with me? They're asking you for quality time. And then you observe how they relate to other children. Just watch them. If they're always giving encouraging words to other children, you will probably know that is their love language, words of affirmation. I learned my son's love language when he was about 4. When I would come home in the afternoon, I would sit down on the couch, he'd come in and jump up on my lap and he'd mess up my hair. He's touching me because he wants to be touched. Now, my daughter's love language was quality time. So when I would come home, she would say to me, Daddy, come into my room. I want you to see this. Daddy, come into my room. She was asking me for quality time. So as she got older, junior high and high school, she and I would take walks together every day after, not every day, 2 or 3 days a week after dinner. After I washed dishes for my wife, because her language is acts of service, remember? My son would never walk with me. He said, walking is dumb. You're not going anywhere. If you're going somewhere, drive. Now, what I'm trying to say is this. The whole concept I'm sharing with you is that if we learn to speak the love language of our spouse and of our children, we change the emotional climate in the family. What I've shared with you could literally save thousands of marriages. In fact,